since this is the Fox 43 Book Club, we're all about like local authors and stuff. So can you just tell me about like your ties to Pennsylvania?
Oh, I was born in Philadelphia. And as you know, I now live in Lititz, so I'm born and bred Pennsylvanian.
What inspired Caledonia?
Oh, okay. I love historical novels. I love reading them. And I was reading a wonderful novel about Scotland. And I had already written my first book, so I thought, oh, I would love to write something about Scotland, because authors, are always looking for the very next topic. So I started to read a couple of history books on Scotland, and while I was reading them, I read about a very peculiar event called the Darien Scheme. And the Darien Scheme was basically about Scotland wanting to create a colony in the New World. And they did so where Panama is today. And I had never heard of this. I have a degree in history. I've taught history. So I started asking around other history teachers and other people who love reading history, and nobody knew about this. So I thought, wow, that's great. This is just what I'm looking for, the topic that nobody knows. And so I started to read about the Darien Scheme. There's a couple of books out on it. And I was totally hooked. And I thought, this is what I have to write about. So I created my characters, and there you go. That's how Caledonia was born.
Very cool. I have never heard of this either, so I'm very excited to read the book. I haven't started yet because it hasn't arrived,
Okay.
and I'm anxiously awaiting.
Okay.
um, but speaking of your characters, you were saying at the end, can you tell me a little bit about like your two main characters and like how you built their personalities and that sort of thing?
Okay. Well, the two main characters are Hannah and Anna. And Hannah is the modern day character. She is her story takes place in the 21st century in modern day. And Anna is the 17th century uh, character. And so they are living centuries apart. By the way, this is not time travel whatsoever. It's just two characters living centuries apart. And as you get into the book, you realize that there is a connection between the two. And the more you read, the more you realize that connection is getting stronger and stronger. And so one character, the Anna character, the ancient one, she is the one that you will experience what happened in the Darien project or the Darien scheme, but it's through the eyes of Hannah. Hannah will discover all of that information. So between the two, you learn about the Darien scheme.
Very cool. And what kind of made you decide to do like a dual perspective like this?
Oh, because I love reading them myself. A lot of what I write, I'm a huge reader of historical novels. So I put into my books what I've learned from other authors and their techniques.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a huge part of writing, I think, is reading. So that makes a
Oh,
lot of sense.
absolutely. Lots of times, I belong to a couple of Facebook groups for authors, and often a new author will write in and say, "Well, how can I become a better author or a better writer?" And everybody responds, "Read." That is so important. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And then is this book like autobiographical at all? Did you draw any inspiration from your own life, or is it mostly like research?
Research is a huge part of any of my writing. As for it being any part of it autobiographical, well, there's a couple of characters in there. There's one character, that I sort of thought of my daughter when I was writing that. So yes, there are some characters that in my mind, you can't help but do that. Because there's a saying, authors write what they know. And so that's what you pull on to help you get those stories written.
Absolutely. Makes sense. And then can you talk about like your experience going to Scotland to write this book? That sounds really, really cool, and I'd love to hear about it.
Okay. I've been to Scotland many times. But it's true when I was writing this book, My husband and I went to Scotland and just toured all around the country. And I went to those places that I was including in my book because I wanted to get it right. And I've had people from Scotland who have read my book and they say, "Oh, we know you've been here." And a funny part of doing that research is there is one part in the story where I talk about this alleyway in Edinburgh. It's called Lady Stairs Close. A close in Scotland means an alleyway that leads to a courtyard. And I described the alleyway as being painted pink. The inside walls were all painted pink. Well, about 2 years later, I went back and they were painted gray. And I thought, oh my gosh, if anybody happens to go by, they're going to think I didn't know what I was talking about. But honestly, it really was pink when I wrote about them. So visiting the location, what you're writing about makes all the difference. I take pictures, lots of pictures. So when I get home, I can pull them up and see exactly where I was. I have written books that I have not been able to go to. It is more challenging, of course, but the internet is very helpful. So I can do Google Earth or I can pick up pictures but it is much better to actually be there. It really helps with the writing.
Awesome. Like, what a great excuse, "Oh, darn, I have to go to Scotland. I'm writing a book. Whoa."
Well, it's not only research with traveling, but I do research on different foods. So I get to try all these different foods. So because of Caledonia and Mannahatta, the sequel, I got to try foods like passion fruit, which is now one of my favorite fruits, tablet, which is a wonderful fudge like consistency candy from Scotland. Also Cullen skink, which is a type of soup, which is a fish chowder, which is really delicious. So it's wonderful. So when I mention my characters in Caledonia and Mannahatta having Cullen skink soup or they're having sticky toffee pudding, I can tell you exactly what they taste like. And that's one of the things I try to do when I'm writing is to bring out the senses. So it's not only what my characters are smelling or seeing or hearing, but it's also what they're tasting. And I try to and I can authentically bring that out.
Awesome, like a fully immersive story, you know?
Exactly. I want my characters to be fully immersed because when I read historical novels, I want the same.
That's awesome. Okay, and then can you tell me a little bit about, like, your writing process and, like or what does a typical day of writing look for you, or how do you go about it, I guess?
Okay, well, I'm retired, so I have the liberty of being able to write just about any time I want. So when I'm in the throes of writing, I will escape to my computer room anytime I can. And if I'm really involved with my husband and I are traveling, I bring my laptop with me and we'll write as well. So I grab whatever time I have. And for most, because I'm retired, I can write for hours and hours. There is some issues with that because sitting in front of the computer for 7, 8 hours is not great for your back or your neck. So I have to get up and walk around. My writing process also includes music. Um, I usually will latch on. I like classical music, especially opera. And since the opera is an Italian, it doesn't bother me. It's not, distracting what I'm writing. But I'll latch on to one or two operas and I will play them over and over again while I'm writing. It's almost like Pavlov's dogs. It's like I turn the music on and immediately my characters come to life and so does the story. So I try also to make my writing place as wonderful as possible. So I have a really nice computer room to work in. I always have a cup of hot tea, maybe some cookies or something, and I try to make it a pleasant place. And but once the story really gets moving, boy, it's really hard to get away from the computer because you are so into it.
Here, like,
I
let
don't
me
know if
get
that
this all
answers.
out now.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so I know you've written a couple books by now. Have you noticed, like, your writing style, like, change or develop, like, over the books, or have you stayed pretty consistent?
Yeah, I think yeah, I've written 5 books now, and I think that my writing, well, from what my readers tell me, especially I have a couple of readers who read my work as I'm working along. They're called beta readers, and they have told me that they think that the writing has improved. And because I'm learning along the way, writing is a learning process. And I've also found that as writing goes along, I'm faster at it. It's not taking me as long because I know what I have to do. So whereas Caledonia took me about 2.5 years to write, my last book took me a little bit less than a year. So you can see it's just becoming an easier activity for me. And if I have a problem, I now know where to go to find the answer faster. So that, helps as well. And I have people that I can count on to help get those answers.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It's nice when you like find your groove like that, you know? That's really
Yeah,
exciting.
exactly. Writing is about finding your groove.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, and then did you always want to be an author, or was this a more recent thing, or like what was your journey, I guess, to getting here?
Okay. Well, a lot of people say that they wanted to become an author from the minute, from the childhood. Maybe my journey was a little bit different. When I was a young kid, my parents both worked full time, so I was home a lot by myself, especially in the summertime. The public library was less than a block from my house. The library became my home. The librarians were my friends. Books were my companions, and authors were my heroes. And what kid doesn't want to be like their hero? And so I always thought, wow, what would it be like to actually write all those words and all those pages? So fast forward many years later, my this is maybe a couple of years before my mother passed away. She was retiring, and I said to her, she always had my mother was born in Eastern Europe and had wonderful stories. So I suggested to her, why don't you write them down for me? And she did. And they were wonderful. However, when she passed away, and then later on, I'm getting ready to retire, people said, what are you going to do when you retire? And I thought, I have a book to write. And that is my first book, The Lucky One. And it's my mother's story and my contributions to her story. And after I wrote that book, I was hooked. And then came Caledonia, Mannahatta, Expulsion, and The Wall at the Sugar Factory. And I'm
Awesome.
thinking about book number 6 as well.
Always got to be thinking, you know?
Exactly, exactly. And while I'm traveling around like this, I'm always wondering, is there a story someplace? If I go to a museum or I go someplace, maybe I'll hear about some interesting character because I'm always looking for the story that most people don't know about. And how can I tell that story? Maybe that's the teacher in me. I want to teach that story to everybody.
So is that what you did before you started writing? You were a teacher?
Yes, I was a
Nice.
teacher in the public school for 30 years. And then after that, I substitute taught for another 5 years. But yes, I was. And I got into writing that way as well because I don't remember, there was no class that I took about how do you teach kids to write. So I found that the most perplexing thing to do when I was teaching, how do I get my kids to write? So I developed a writing program that I called it the writing process, and it worked so well that I taught other teachers how to do it too. And this was mainly writing nonfiction because that's what kids do. They do book reports and social studies and science reports. And I could have any kid, whether they were from kindergarten through 12th grade, write a report and do it well and with a lot of success. So that also fed into my writing as well, sort of like a perfect storm of all these things that were going on in my life that fed into my becoming an author.
It was meant to be.
Yeah,
Everything was
yeah.
coming together for you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And then you touched on this a little bit earlier, but do you have any plans for future projects? You don't have to tell me any like details or anything, but any
I
future
do.
projects? Yeah.
I have just started thinking about and just starting early pages of writing a novel. And I don't mind telling you, it's would be it take place in Morocco, um, 1834. There's an incident that happened there to a young woman that I never heard of, and everybody I've asked has never heard of as well. It's basically about a young woman who was executed because of her religious beliefs. And I thought, wow, this is sounds like it could be very interesting. So I've delved into it, and that may be my next project.
Very exciting. And then this is also something we touched on earlier, but do you have any advice for like aspiring writers or anybody who wants to become an author?
Well, besides the one about reading a lot, it's important to delve into it and start writing. But I would also suggest you can go online and find writing groups. Some of them will charge, but there are free ones as well. You can get on and you can post what you've just written. It doesn't matter if it's 1 page or 10 pages. And other people can check it out and give you clues. That's what I did. One of my chapters in Caledonia, it's chapter 4. That's how I started. Originally, I thought that was going to be my first chapter, but it ended up being chapter 4. And I had that chapter read so many times by people online. And then the other thing that new writers can do is go to your public library. A lot of public libraries have writing groups. And you can go there. These groups are free and you can join in and you can critique each other's work. It's not only important for you to have other writers critique your work, but it is important for you to critique others because as you are correcting others, you will learn for yourself. And that's when I used to teach writing in school, I used to have students correct other kids' work because it's the same thing. When you critique other people's work, you will learn yourself.
That's cool. Honestly never really thought about that. Like the reading part, sure, but like not correcting others' work. So that's really cool.
Absolutely, because you'll learn when you see their mistakes, then you'll learn, oh, I should not do that. And can I give you an example? Okay, so
Absolutely.
the very first time I offered some of my work, which was at that chapter 4 I mentioned, I was giving a bit of backstory to the main character. And what I was doing was called a backstory dump. I was dumping all the information at one time. And one of the writers online said, no, 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 you have to slowly give out the backstory. And so that's what I did. And I used a vehicle. If you read chapter 4, there's a train ride that my main character was on. And every time she comes to another stop on the train, she remembers more and more of her backstory comes out. So, and rather than just give it all at one time, spread it out. And in fact, I spread it out all the way through all 41 chapters. So that
Awesome.
was something I learned.
It's like leaving like the trail of breadcrumbs all through the book. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. Be Gretel in Hansel and Gretel and spread those breadcrumbs.
awesome. That's good advice. And then that was all the questions that I had, but if you have anything that you wanted to add, feel free. Now the floor is yours.
Okay, well, the only thing I will add about my writing is I one of the things that writers have problems with is reaching out and finding readers. And one of the ways that I do that is I offer PowerPoint programs on my books. I have 5 books and I have 4 PowerPoint programs. I don't charge for these; they run about an hour. And in those PowerPoint programs, I might discuss the history behind my book, or in Caledonia's example, I discuss how I wrote Caledonia. What was my process? What did I go through in order to write that book? So I offer these PowerPoint programs, and I also meet with book clubs. It's kind of fun to have the author sitting in the room with you, whether it's Zoom or not, because you can ask me any questions like, why did you kill off my favorite character? Or where did you come up with that idea? And when I'm there, I will tell all. So those are, and that's how I reach readers actually all over the country because with Zoom, I can go anywhere.
That sounds so fun too, like both for the reader and for the author. Like I would love to pick the brain of like the authors of some of my favorite books. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and in fact, with Caledonia, I remember I was at one book club, and one of the readers said to me, "Why did you kill off that character? She was my favorite." But I purposely will do that because I find that other authors, they get so attached to their characters that they don't kill them. Sometimes you gotta kill off a favorite character because it builds the tension in the book, and tension it all fiction is tension. If you don't have tension in your book, you will lose your reader. So you have to maintain that tension and keep people on the edge of their seat. Turning those pages is what it's all about.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you figured out your formula. So that's
Yeah, yeah,
awesome.
exactly.